let's talk about actors. You notice that I'm on the Actors Compendium tab right now, and I have a whole ton of folders here. But let's just quickly talk about actors. You'll notice here that I have some examples. I have 3 different versions of the Bandit stat block, and you'll notice that they're all fundamentally identical. I don't know why that one opened the features page, but they're all basically the same. You'll notice that they all have the same placeholder artwork. If I wanted to change that, I could go in here and navigate with the file browser, but I don't. And these all look basically the same, but looks can be a little bit deceiving here because each of these is somewhat unique. You'll notice that if I drag out this bandit stat block, or this cultist, or this thug, they use different artwork based on the actor. This is because they have different token settings. So let's talk about actors a little bit. Actors, specifically NPCs, have attributes, features, spellbooks, effects, and biography. Biography is text. For example, this is imported from D&D Beyond, so it has that description there. And this attributes page basically handles their basic gameplay mechanics, their ability scores, their skill proficiencies, if any, resistances, senses, all of that. Their features describes what they can do, so attacks, actions, all of that comes lumped in here. The spellbook, if a creature is a caster, so for example, the Cult Fanatic has a spellbook page and it tells you what their casting attribute is, and you can reset that if you want. You have all those options here. You also have, you'll notice that these have different features, so they have different things here. And so, for example, you can see that there's the multi-attack action, which actually does not do anything on Foundry. You can click it, it will send to the chat log. It doesn't roll 2 attacks or anything. It's not automated like that. But one thing that Foundry does handle is that each of these attacks actually are tied to various things on that sheet. So if I want to roll a scimitar attack, hop over to the chat log, and you can see that I have a +3 to hit. That comes from the proficiency bonus of +2 and the dexterity modifier of +1. I'm actually going to close or open up this specific sheet. You'll notice that here it says bandit. That's the wrong sheet. Here it says bandit, and here it says token bandit. That is letting me know that this is a token, not an actor in the compendium. So I can make changes to this and it won't feed back here. So let's say I want to modify this bandit a bit. I can drag this dagger over from the Cult Fanatic. It doesn't remove from that sheet, but it does add it here. I can add multi-attack, I can add Dark Devotion. I don't want to add spellcasting because this is just a bandit. And then I can roll these off of the bandit sheet, and it will roll with the bandit's game properties. And I can roll then off of the cultist sheet, and we'll roll with the cultist properties. So the cultist has +2 to the dexterity modifier, so you can see that its damage is +2, whereas for the bandit it is a +1, so its damage is only +1. And I can modify that. So on this token, if I want my bandit to be particularly special, I can make him a CR30 bandit, and that will automatically apply to his proficiency bonus. It doesn't change all the other game statistics. It doesn't make monsters for you. If I roll that dagger now, you'll notice that that has a +9 from his proficiency bonus, and if I change his dexterity score to 30 as well, because that dagger scales with dexterity, he adds 10 from his dexterity modifier too. So you can really make things quite adaptable that way. Let's take a look at that particular dagger to show how Foundry is doing that. So you'll notice that this actually does not have a base weapon type selected. Most items do, but with imports from D&D Beyond for creatures, it does not. Let's, just for giggles, set this to be a dagger, and then switch this from having the dexterity modifier to having the default modifier. You will notice then that if I roll this dagger, it will scale off dexterity still, whereas if I tell it that it's a club, and then I roll it, it will roll still with the dexterity modifier. I thought that was, oh, because it has the finesse toggle. You'll notice that it uses the strength modifier. I definitely double checked my work before doing that. Yep. If I toggle finesse back on and set it to strength, it should still roll with dexterity. It does not because Foundry is not that smart, but with default it will. Ability modifier there is actually technically an override, so I'm being rude to Foundry when I shouldn't be. You'll notice that I could also add a manual attack bonus, so let's make this dagger the ultimate killing weapon. It has a plus 10 to hit, plus 10 from dex, and plus 9 from proficiency. And then if I want to increase its damage bonus, you'll see that it has this 1d4 plus piercing plus ability modifier. That will scale with that selection here. And so I could just say plus 99. And then I roll this dagger, it will kill my player characters in 2 hits. And they're going to give me dirty looks for the rest of my life. But that's the kind of thing you can do with Foundry with extensibility. You could also toggle this proficiency modifier. Maybe he's really dexterous, but he's never learned how to use a knife. You'll notice that he didn't add his proficiency modifier to that attack roll. And so this is fairly robust. I'll switch that back. It doesn't really matter. This is a token, so it's going to go away. So it's pretty robust in how you can modify things. Most features don't automatically activate, but some do. Depending on what modules you have installed, like MIDI call and dynamic active effects. But we won't talk about those right now. It's a little bit beyond our scope for this video. But let's talk about prototype tokens for a second. So you notice how each of these has their own token. Even though they use the same stat block, they drag out differently. And that is because of the settings in their tokens. These are basically just, I copied the bandit stat block, renamed it to be relevant for the token I was using to represent it, and then that is how it works. So let's look at the stats for this prototype token here. And this is the token on the sheet. If I were to drag it out from that actor folder, this is what it would pull out. Not that terrible abomination I made, but this sheet would be pulled out fresh. And I have it set so that it will roll for HP when I drag creatures out, thanks to a module, so you'll probably hear or see the dice rolls for HP when I drag it out. It will be different each time. That would change if I had link actor data on. We'll talk about that in a second. But token name is the name of the token. So you'll notice that this, that's the wrong button. This bandit has the same token name, even though it has a different actor name. So if players were able to see the token name, if it shows up in a chat log, or if I have the display name toggle on, they would see it there. Though these are by default configured to hide from me based off a module setting. I hide the names of hostile creatures for metagaming purposes, but that's from a different module, so we won't really cover that. But you'll notice that these prototype tokens can be set to link actor data, and that means that stuff flows to and from the token. Generally, when you drag, like for example this token, anything I do to this token does not flow back to this sheet. Because the actor data is not linked. But if I toggled link actor data, it would. So for player characters, for example, link actor data is toggled on by default because player characters move across scenes, they show up in multiple different sessions, and so having that actor data linked means that when they take hits, it tracks HP, it tracks spell resources, and if you drag that token out on another map, it follows. Token disposition is also something you can change. Mostly just changes the color of the outline in Foundry, but if you have certain automation modules like the name hiding module, and you change the disposition to neutral or friendly, depending on how you have those set to make those names appear, whereas if it was hostile, it would be concealed. Image is a little bit important as well. You'll notice that I have this really ugly URL because of how Foundry handles addresses, and not URL, address. And you'll notice that it is pointing to an entire folder full of tokens. And if I go to this folder, which it won't want me to because it won't reconvert back to things, but I can navigate to it. Let's see. Tokens by type, there we go. And go in here, you'll notice that I have all these tokens in here that have that wild card. It is grabbing those. If I wanted to limit this more, let's say I only want captains, I can set it to only grab the captain. So if we look at the prototype token for my bandit captain block, you'll notice that it has the same path except that it has specifically the bandit captain specified. So when I drag that out, it's a token appropriate for the bandit captain stat block. I will grab from any of these based on how I have it set right now to drag out for this token. So if I drag this token out again, it will be random. If we look at the specific token, once that wild card is selected, you'll notice that this looks a little different. It has a specific token image that's selected. But you'll notice that you can also change height and size. So I have this token set to scale at 1 because that's the size that works well. But you'll notice that like that thug token looks a little bit small. If I want to fix it, I could go to its prototype token, select its image, and scale it up to 1.2. And it won't update the token that already exists. But if I drag out another one, you'll notice that that was a bad example because it's a very different token. It's supposed to be at a different scaling. So you'll notice that it is scaled, even though because it grabbed a smaller looking posture, it looks the same. But let's hop back to this bandit prototype token real quick. You can do some things, tint it, mirror the images if you want to make it a little more unique. But you can also adjust opacity for tokens. Position doesn't show up on prototype tokens. You can notice here that this token has position, but that's not something that shows up on prototype tokens. Generally, it just reflects where it is on the map, and tokens snap to grid, so you don't need to worry about that too much. Vision, if these creatures had any special vision, it would show up as dim or bright vision. So if this creature had dark vision 60, it would have been populated as dim vision 60 when it imported. If I wanted this token to be able to see in the dark, I would give it a dark vision of a certain range. And I could also make it emit light if he's carrying a lantern or something. And then resources, just is how that sets up that bar display. So you'll see that it has that HP bar below, so I can see which of my bandits are about to croak. That generally covers actors on a fundamental level. Let's talk about player characters, because player characters are a little bit different. So I have my cleric here. You'll notice that it looks a little bit different. For one, there's this inventory tab. Items go in the inventory tab, as do some actions on the D&D Beyond character sheet. This character is imported from D&D Beyond using the D&D Beyond importer module. That module is particularly useful for grabbing character sheets off of D&D Beyond. It is made by Mr. Primate, I believe, and it is very convenient for importing things automatically. I can just go in here and click Start Import, and it will grab any changes. I've already updated my character sheet, so I'm not going to do that now, but it does lag a little bit. But you can see all the items that I have on my D&D Beyond character sheet, and they interact properly. So, for example, I have 16 dexterity, so if I roll my short bow, even though I haven't manually configured it, you'll see that has my +4 proficiency bonus and my +3 dexterity modifier. Whereas if I roll my warhammer with my 12 strength, it has the +2 from the weapon, +1 from my strength, and +4 from my proficiency. So that is worth noting. You'll also notice that like some of these items have charges. Sometimes things don't recharge properly. Sometimes things recharge on long rest. So, for example, there you'll notice that I recharged that ring of animal influence when I did that long rest. That's important for players to know because they will often need to do that. You'll notice my features page with my class features. One of the things you can do on D&D Beyond, and I have to be careful about this because I'm modifying my own character, is that you can, or on Foundry, sorry, is that you can add items and things that you have in Compendium. So for example, in here I have additional items. So let's say I bought adamantine plate and I don't want to update D&D Beyond, so I'm just going to drag it in here. And I can drag that adamantine plate in, and then I can set it to be equipped, which I can't actually equip adamantine plate on this character because of the strength modifier without penalties, but you'll notice I can also go into the details page, and let's say I had an artificer infusion that wasn't tracked properly, that was giving to +1, I could set it to 19 here instead of 18. I could remove the required strength if I wanted to, but I can change the base type of armor. Those will change various properties. Some of this comes from dynamic active effects, so it's a little bit janky on implementation because I have multiple modules doing a bunch of different things. So your mileage may vary depending on your module setup, how smooth this automation is. But I can use these items, and it will consume charges when I use them. So if I click this one, Magic Missiles, you'll see that in the chat log. It says that I've used a charge, and I can go to my spell book, and it will have somewhere in here, yes, I will add Magic Missile. It actually has its own uses that tracks here, and then I can roll it there to keep up with that. the two don't synergize properly. It's a issue of how D&D Beyond imports handle associating resources. But you'll notice that I do have some of my resources like Steps of the Night, Channel Defending Hearts to my power. If I use those features, that does track here. I mentioned using the D&D Beyond importer. If you have something that you want to protect from the D&D Beyond importer on a character sheet or on like a creature stat block, you can go here and then toggle that setting. And that way, if you import from D&D Beyond, it will keep any overrides you have. For example, if you have an artificer using a weapon, an artificer battlement that uses an intelligence modifier, you go into their weapon properties, change the ability score here, and then protect that here so that it wouldn't be lost every time you update the character sheet. One last thing about player characters that you need to be aware of as the DM is that unless you assign it to players, they can't see it. So, for example, this is my character at the moment, so I am set as the owner for that token so that when I log in as a player, I can make changes to the sheet, track resources, see the tokens line of sight, stuff like that, which is very important for players because otherwise they'll be sitting at a black screen the entire time. So you'll want to make sure that you assign ownership of tokens properly in order to let your players control their characters. And you'll also notice things like my spellbook. So you'll notice on my spellbook, Devotion is a Twilight Domain Cleric. So if I scroll to 2nd level, you'll notice that I have these spells prepared. I also have always prepared spells. Let's say I'm a cleric, I can prepare different spells. Let's say I wanted to grab Armor of Agathis. It's not a cleric spell, but this is just for a demonstration. I could drag it onto my sheet. It would automatically put it in my 1st level place, or portion of the spell book, and it would say unprepared because I have not prepared it. I can prepare it. D&D Beyond, or Foundry, sorry, will let you cast spells that you don't have prepared. And also set that to be always prepared by going into the settings, details, always prepared, or at will or innate spell casting if you want to give that to a character. But that is the basics, and that is levelware. So like if I go to Cloudkill and drag it in, it will put it at 5th level because Cloudkill is a 5th level spell. And it will use the appropriate spellcasting modifiers. So I'm a Wisdom caster as a cleric. So if I cast a spell, it would cast that appropriate attribute. So I cast Sacred Flame, and it says my spell save DC is 19. If for some reason my casting attribute was Strength somehow, and I cast that, it would change that the DC of that saving throw based on that change. And that is modified by my Amulet of the Devout +2. So if you're wondering how I get with my Wisdom and my Proficiency bonus 19 spell save, items can, with the benefit of various things, work. That's a little bit above my pay grade, but basically that is the fundamentals on how that works. So that should let you know how to use actors. You can also duplicate actors. So if you have, sorry, let me do something real quick with these. I have not sorted these very well. I'm a very messy DM. You have noticed that there are a lot of folders, and that is never going to get better, but it can certainly get worse. So like if I want to add a new type of bandit, I could do right-click, duplicate, and then I'd have a copy of that stat block, and I could change it to be whatever I want. So if I want to make, a version of bandits that were all orcs, I could do that and just change the token so that it would look like orcs to my players. So that's the rundown on actors. It's worth noting that there are some more things you can do with that I didn't touch on, but that should give you enough to know to get that set up and started. So our next video will cover roll tables, and then I think we just have compendiums left and we are done.